Hey YouTube, it's Marida from the Nurse Lounge, and today I was actually trying to record for you all a video, a vlog, a work vlog. You see I'm still partially in uniform. I have my shirt on and that's pretty much it. Side ponytail per usual, and I just got off of work and home now. So when I went to go try to edit this, I realized I didn't have any footage. I didn't have any. So I'm like, I don't know what happened to it. So instead of scrapping it all together, I wanted to just give you a story time about my day, how it went today, and basically what I walked into, and I'm going to take you from the beginning to the end. So if you want to see what happened at work today without the footage, just want to hear story time, then stay tuned. All right, so my name is Dr. Marida P. I'm a registered nurse, been a nurse for 16 years, and I still work bedside. And so today I was coming to you with a work vlog, but again, the footage got scrapped somehow. I don't know what happened to it. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened today and just kind of give you some pointers from my experiences today. So this is more of a story time instead of a work vlog because again, I've lost the footage. So let's start off with this morning. Let's start off with yesterday. So yesterday I got a text about 1:30 in the afternoon saying I was going to be needed today. So I then was mentally ready to work today. I was on call, but they knew they were going to need me, so they went ahead and called me yesterday to be ready to come in this morning. And I was only work 6 hours per usual. When I'm on call, I only work 6-hour shifts. I do not work 12s for call. I just do 6. Because I hate to be obligated to the hospital for an entire day, and then sit around and can't do anything. So that's the reason why I do the 6-hour call shifts. And then of course, when I work, I work. So I walk in today, I'm on time today, and I walk in and I happen to see like literally every board or almost every room was filled up on the board. So I'm going to insert some footage. I did take some pictures today. So I'm going to insert, the picture right here where you can see our, that every room is pretty full. This is our census board, and you can see the rooms are pretty much full. We have about a 24-bed postpartum unit, and so we usually occupy all rooms except for one, and the one we don't occupy is across the nurses station, but we will use it if we have to. So I'll walk in to 3 nurses with 20 patients. That's a red flag right there. Okay. So when it comes to ratios, our ratio is 1-6, and we need 4 nurses at 20 patients. Okay. So once you hit the 20th patient, once you hit the 19th patient, once we hit the 19th patients, we require for 4 nurses. That way everybody has 6 patients apiece. Well, we walk in today with 3 nurses with 20 patients, and 2 of those patients will be wheeled over at 6:45 in the morning, which is change of shift. Literally wheeled over at that point in time. Now, that's some bull right there. And at that point in time, I knew it was going to be a pretty busy shift, okay? Especially when they only said we only had 3 nurses during the day shift at that. 3 nurses, you think I'm going to take some more patients? So we had 20 patients, so therefore we had 7. So we had 3 nurses, 20 patients, so a 7, 7, and 6, okay? I'm going to show you footage right here of where I took the 6 patients. I was not taking 7. At that point in time, they could decide to send me home or whatever they're going to do. But I made sure we clarify that before I clocked in. If you clock in and then try to refuse, they can charge you with abandonment and you can lose your license for that. So I want to make sure before I clock in that you understand that I'm only going to do 6 patients, and then whatever else y'all want to do, if y'all want to take 7 patients apiece, so be it. And I did have my 6 patients. And just so you know, FYI, we do not have techs on our floor at all. So no techs, no nothing. The nurse, as the nurse, registered nurse, I do it all. I get my patients up, I empty catheters, I take catheters out, I turn off IVs, pull them, things like that. I do all of that all by myself, pass meds, do vital signs, the whole 9, all by myself for all 6 patients. So when I agreed to my patient load of 6 and we get reports, I ended up with 3 fresh C-sections And three of them, all three had IVs still in place. They were fresh C-sections, literally. So three fresh C-sections, a fresh vaginal delivery, and then two older vaginal deliveries who are going home today. Now, as I've told you before, when I'm working 6-hour shifts, my priority is not for my discharges. My priority is for one to do my assessments first. My assessments, med passes, vital signs, things like that, and then I chart. And then after that, then I work on getting my discharges done. Especially since that I know I'm leaving at 1 o'clock anyway. I refuse to stay after 1 o'clock just to chart. So that's the whole point of getting off at 1 is to get off right around 1. So I don't. I typically do it in that order, and then that way, if when I do leave, the next nurse, the only thing she has to do, because all the patient care has been done at that point in time, all she has to do is just print off the paperwork and have them sign it, and that's all she has to do. So I usually try to set the next nurse up behind me for success, meaning I did all the hard work. I did all the vital signs, I did all the med passes, I did all the assessments, all the interventions that need to be done at least for the first half of the day, and then afternoon, all she has to do is, like I said, do those discharges. So, and then whatever her afternoon assessments happen to be. So that's kind of what, we typically have been doing. So I go around and make my rounds. I go ahead and make my rounds. And this new Omnicell, which I told you is like our new Pyxis. It's not called a Pyxis, but if you know what the medication dispense system is, it's called Omnicell. And I happen to like it. I had footage, but I happen to like it. You only have to log in. You have to put in your name and password and your fingerprint once, and that's good for the next 96 hours. So tomorrow, hopefully I'll have footage for you, but I'll go back, and all I have to do is put my fingerprint on there, and it opens back up. I don't have to do no password or nothing after that. So every 96 hours, it kind of resets itself. But if you're there for 96 hours in a row, not in a row, but you work, let's say 2 or 3 shifts in a row, then you only have to put your fingerprint in once you have put in your name, username, and your password. I love that about the Omnicell. Love it, love it, love it. So I go see my patients. Again, I have 3 fresh C-sections, okay? So we don't factor in acuity at our facility. Acuity is not factored in. You get what you get. And if you, well, I won't say it's not, you get what you get. If you want to complain about it, you can, but doesn't mean anything's going to happen about it when it comes to your acuity of your patient. So for me, I wasn't about to argue with these people because I already refused to take more than 6 patients anyway. So I went ahead and just took the higher acuity patients, which was fine with me. They were just C-sections and they just required more care. Luckily, none of them required antibiotics. None of them required anything but just IV maintenance fluids and things like that, changing bags. And 2 of them actually had their IVs taken out while I was there. So I had an 8 o'clock IV discontinue and dressing change, and I had a 10:30 IV discontinue and dressing change. So, or no, not a dressing change, just the IV out. So that was great. So I end up doing that. I passed on my meds. I did have my fresh vaginal delivery, had a headache that I believe was a spinal headache. It goes from like a 5 to a 10, just like that, because she sat up. Those are your epidural spinal type headaches that you have. And typically they have to do a wet tap. Well, the CRNAs were claiming that that's not what was wrong with her. They had gave her caffeine and things like that, and it didn't work. She said, of course, medication doesn't work. You usually have to do a blood patch is what it's called. You usually have to do a blood patch. And they claim it didn't work. So then later in the shift, the doctor said that she would give a muscle relaxer because that's what they believed it was. I don't believe it was a muscle. I think she had a spinal headache, basically is what it's called. She had a spinal headache, and for whatever reason, they was not addressing and treating it, but that's miserable to have a headache and you can't get rid of it. And just to get up and move causes your head to be even worse. So we were dealing with that all day. By the time I left at 1:40 this afternoon, she still hadn't got her muscle relaxer yet. I called at noon. At 9:45 this morning, she said she's going to do this for the patient. At noon, I called the physician and said, hey, I just want to remind you about that. She said, well, I got it. I'll get to it. I'm like, okay, fine. So I let the patient know that the doctor said she would get to it. Couldn't make any promises when, but I just medicated her on my own regardless. The biggest 2 things I wanted to talk about today, though, is, for one, I learned how to change a Pico dressing. So I had a patient who, she has a Pico dressing, and a Pico dressing is basically like a wound vac. It's like basically like a wound vac. And a mini wound vac. It's like about this big. It's like a little square, about that big. It's like a mini wound vac right here. And it basically does what the normal wound vacs do. It suctions and it pulls all that blood out, and or that drainage out. And evidently, so I do my assessments pretty thoroughly, and I happen to go down to look at her incision or where the dressing was. And with these dressings, they go home with them on, and they get seen at the doctor's office later. But I happen to look at her dressing, and I'm like, wait a minute, why is it saturated from tip to tip? And not only was it saturated, it was pooling blood. You could see the blood pockets, if you will, on the dressing itself. I said, we need to change this. I had one more patient I needed to see, and she wanted to eat breakfast at that point in time. So I told her, I said, this was urgent but not emergent. So it wasn't an emergency, but we needed to get that changed pretty quick because we also wanted to make sure that her incision is clean and things like that. So I had to recruit some nurses because I am not good with, I don't know how to do it. I've never did a pico dressing before. So this is my first time doing it. It took 3 of us, but we ended up getting it changed and creating that suction and things we had to do to make sure that it laid completely down flat like it's supposed to. And I was ashamed the fact that the nurse prior to me did not do an assessment at all. So I asked the patient, I said, did anybody look at your belly yesterday? She said, or last night? She said, no, not since day shift, yesterday. So sometime between change of shift on yesterday and this morning when I went to do my assessment, that whole thing became saturated because that pump, that wound vac was no longer suctioning that blood. It wasn't pulling it out. It was just coming out on the dressing. So when I tell you I was floored that the nurse prior didn't even look to do an assessment. So what is she charting? What is she charting if you didn't look to do an assessment? And now you up here, your patient bleeding. Her incision's oozing. Her incision was oozing. So when we do go back in, probably about 30 minutes later to actually change the dressing and everything like that, when we go to take everything off, she had staples underneath, but that incision was just oozing blood. It was just kind of pooling and pooling and pooling all kinds of blood and stuff like that. It was just nasty. So I'm like, okay, what nurse does not do a thorough assessment and look at an incision area or a dressing area for a patient who just had surgery? Who does that? Do an assessment on your patients. If they had surgery, you need to look at the surgery site or the dressing where the surgery site is. The nurse prior to me did not do that, and as a result, that's what happens, what it looked like. And so it was to the point where the patient had said she does not want that nurse back if she does return tonight to work, which she is scheduled to work tonight. So I made sure I told the charge nurse that this patient does not want this nurse tonight if she does come back. So I learned how to change a pico dressing, which I'm excited about. So if you don't know what a pico dressing is, definitely look that up. But it's a wound vac, basically, mini wound vac, and they go home with it. And then they come back to the office within usually 5 days or so, and the doctor will take it off and then also look at the incision. We already know she had staples because of the fact that we took the dressing off, the old saturated one off. We cleaned her incision with saline. What is it called? Normal saline syringes. Thank you. Normal saline syringes. And basically I just took it and squirted it across her incision. That's all I did. And that was just to help clean the incision and clean that blood off. And then I took some sterile gauze and we patted it dry really, really good before we actually applied the new dressing. Because if you don't have a good seal on that, then you're going to have an air leak and therefore it won't work properly and things like that can happen. So anyway, and the nurse would have known that if she had did her assessment the night before, that or at some point during her shift, that you have to have have a good seal. So what ended up happening after that was she ends up being fine. Nothing happened bad besides that, but we had to change her dressing. And the only other issue I had today, if you want to call it an issue, it wasn't even an issue, but this is a teaching moment. So I want to express this moment to you because it is very much a teaching moment. I'm not sure if you all know what professional courtesy means. And professional courtesy, if you don't know, is basically when you are, let's just say you are already in or maybe when you walk into a patient's room and there's already somebody in the room doing something. Let's say when you walk into the patient's room and a physician is already in the room. And when a physician's already in the room and what you have to do is not urgent, it's not per se scheduled or something you can come back and do later, you allow them the professional courtesy to finish what they were doing. You don't interrupt them. So When I went to go see my patient today, I was already in the midst of doing an assessment on this very same patient with the pico dress, as a matter of fact. And the pediatrician walks in and says, "My name is Dr. Such and Such. I'm going to do the baby's circumcision." And he proceeds to continue talking. And I'm looking at him like, I know he didn't just come in here and see me trying to do fundal assessments and whatnot and just continue to talk as if I don't even exist. Didn't even acknowledge that I was in the room. So I said, you know what I do? So I mean, I didn't do her fundal assessment because I wanted to provide her privacy. But I said, okay, I'm not leaving. So I didn't say that. But by me just standing there, he saw I wasn't leaving. So what I ended up doing was I just went ahead and did her vital signs, passed her meds, and did things I need to do. And he looked at me as if I should have left already. But I'm like, nah, I'm not leaving. Professional courtesy would allow for you to say, excuse me, I just really need to talk to her about this real quick, about her son's circumcision or something along those lines. And is it okay if I interject? It'll only be about 5 minutes. At least acknowledge the fact that they're doing something. And if you work in bedside long enough, you know that eventually as you go from room to room to room, the doctors are going room to room to room. So they end up following you or you follow them, or how it works. And so he caught on pretty quick that I was not budging. I kept on doing what I needed to do. And he was looking at me like, okay, I should have stopped. I'm not going to, because professional courtesy means, and this wasn't something that was urgent or emergent, things like that. I was already in the room first. When I'm in the room first and it's something that urgently that or what I need to get done, I'm going to finish. Point blank, period. And I did. I finished. And then, of course, like I said, we were chasing each other, so to speak. So then I went to another room. And luckily, I had finished that assessment already. I was done with the assessment. I was just passing her meds and things like that. And here he comes with that same spiel again to this patient about circumcisions, or I don't know what happened. No, it wasn't circumcision because it was a girl. I got basically about breastfeeding, things like that. He was just making his rounds. And again, there's nothing wrong with him making his rounds. And I may be more respectful, if you will, or more polite if he had at least acknowledged the fact that I was there. As if we had this hierarchy, as if physicians, if a physician steps into a room or whatever to do something, that they must be of importance and therefore you should back down because you're the nurse. No, ma'am, I'm here to tell, or no, sir, either one, I'm here to tell you that's not how I operate. If what you need to do is urgent, then fine, it's not a problem. Or emergent, that's fine. If I need to do something or what I need to do is not urgent, I don't mind backing off. But what you will not do is come in and not acknowledge the fact that I'm there and interrupt what I'm doing when I'm talking to the patient. Like, blatantly interrupt me talking to the patient, trying to interject about some circumcision type of thing or breastfeeding, whatever issue may be. So I don't tolerate that. And there's ways to be professional about it to let people know I do not tolerate that. You will not disrespect me. And that's just, you know, who the pediatrician happens to be. He's that kind of person. And so I'm just like, okay, remember your professional courtesy. So if somebody's already in the room and you don't have to do something, you don't have to do something right away, then come back. But don't ever be in the mindset that you're just as important as the next person. Okay. So when I walk into a room and the picture lady is there to take pictures, I'll ask her about how long do you think this will be? And 9 times out of 10, they've been trained that if the nurse walks in, that you stop what you're doing unless they're in the middle of a picture session. If they're in the middle of a picture session, then depending on what I need to do with mom, I usually just do it. If I need to do vital signs, and the baby's taking pictures, I'll just do what I need to do. But if it's something that's going to require mom, I just kind of have to kind of govern myself on a case-by-case basis. But my point is this. A lot of times physicians think there is truly a hierarchy between physician and nurse, and there's not. Unless you work in a clinic, and I've said this before. So if you work in a clinic, you are working usually under a physician type of thing. But if you work in a hospital, you are not working for the physician, you work for the hospital, and that physician has privileges at the hospital that you work at. So let's just say I don't work for HCA, but let's say I work for a HCA hospital. I work for a HCA hospital. The doctor has privileges. He's allowed to practice at that hospital. I do not work for him or her. So please understand the difference. So I don't answer to the physician. He's the one who creates the orders, or she creates the orders for their patient. But I answer to the hospital that I work for, if that makes sense. So I don't want you all to think, get out of your mind that, okay, it's doctor, then nurse. we're pretty much right here. Think about this. We're pretty much right here together in the hospital setting. The doctor has a scope of practice that nurses don't have, and the nurse has a scope of practice that the doctors don't have. We do two different things with two different mindsets, okay? When you have a doctor, he or she thinks systems wise. You have somebody with high blood pressure, he's going to think kidneys and heart. Let me fix it. When we think high blood pressure, if you're holistic, you're going to think, yeah, her blood pressure may be up, but she just got in an argument with her boyfriend or husband. She's unemployed. She found out her mother has COVID and is not doing well. So therefore, we know what blood pressure does to the heart and to the kidneys. But we don't just jump into let's medicate her. We may need to medicate her, but we also may need to get case management for her to see about how to help her, because maybe we need to get her some resources for food stamps or for WIC or for whatever. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see the difference? So we have two different scopes of practice. We have two different mindsets in terms of how we operate. For me, we do extensions of the same thing. I'm there for 12 hours or 6 today, and you there for 15 minutes. That's what it is, okay? And so therefore, I think I know, you know how to do surgeries that I don't do. You know how to do write prescriptions that I'm not allowed to do, because guess what? I am not a physician. But at the same time, when we do an SBAR, you have your situation, background, assessment, assessment and recommendation. Who does recommendation? It's the nurse. The nurse does. So he or she needs to already know what they need to be doing for their patient. That means you are responsible for your patient. You tell the physician this is what we need to do for our patient. And then, of course, if you don't know, then you have to ask. But I'm just saying, SBAR means recommendation, which is what comes from the nurse, okay? And I know my job very, very well. And so I will not be, my whole point in that is I will not be pushed out the way by a physician who wants to come talk about something and interrupt me and don't even acknowledge the fact that I was talking. That is a huge, huge annoying thing for me. So anyway, that's pretty much how the shift went. I ended the shift, with 2 of my patients, their IVs were out. I told you about the dressing change already. I had another nurse discharge one of my patients for me. And when I left, I gave the patients over to another nurse. We had a total of 5 patients left because one of my patients already had left. So we had the 3 C-sections, the vaginal delivery, and the one of the ones who are still going home, who has not went home yet. And so that kind of wraps up my shift. It was not a bad shift at all. I stayed busy the entire 6 hours, 6.5 hours. I didn't even clock out to like 1:36 or something like that. So I stayed busy the entire 6 hours, but, and guess what? I go back tomorrow. So when you see this video, you're probably going to see another video right behind it that hopefully will be a work vlog, which this one should have been before the footage got lost. Should be a work vlog for tomorrow. And so that will be 2 days in a row. So you'll see these pretty much close to back at that point in time. Anyway, that was my story time for today. It was a great busy shift. I posted some pictures and things like that on IG regarding this topic. Now, mind you, by the time some of you see this a year from now, that picture will be a year in the past. But I'm just saying that I posted some pictures about, how we have to be better advocates for ourselves when it comes to nurse ratios, safe staffing. And I'm a big component. I will say this. Our nurse manager came over, I think around 9 something this morning, and she took those patients off of that nurse, plus did all the admissions we had coming in, plus helped me with that pico dressing. I will say that manager stepped in and did exactly what I expect a nurse manager to do, which is great. And that was to relieve the stress of the burdens of the floor. So she did my discharge teaching for me. She did all kinds of things to help us as a unit to deal with having too many patients. And I'm on call tomorrow, like I told you. So I already will be back in the morning, and I know that they don't have to even call me because I saw what mess they were when I left today. So I'm going to end this video here. I'm going to go work out, and I'm going to shower and wash these clothes. I wear the same clothes every time I go to work, and basically get ready for work tomorrow. If you happen to like videos like these, again, this is not a work vlog. This is more of a story time, but it's about work today because I did just work today. I literally just got off. Came home and did this video for you all. Then thumbs this video up. and hit like, comment, subscribe, and share. Follow me on IG. You'll see the banner either here or here. It's not the banner. You'll see the handle either here. The banner's at the top, and you'll see it also in the description box. As usual, let's chat in the comments. My positives, my negatives, how work went. Let's chat in the comments. Till the next time, you all take care. Bye-bye.